Hi everyone, good morning. Yes, welcome to another stunning day. And today we are all outside. Yes, we are all excited. Yes, and with our training season, we are celebrating our international nation and our international generation, right? And with saying that we are outside, so it might get loud, right? And our generation in season is loud. So bear with us if there's cars driving or bikes driving around, because we are in a season that we are having to learn that such is our generation. And there's that about our generation, that when you look at humanity in general, right? When you look at the different countries in general, then you have to allow yourself to understand that such is humanity, such is this earth, right? It can get crazy sometimes, it can get chaotic sometimes, it can get over the place sometimes, and yes, definitely loud sometimes. I know that some of us want to have our generation be in that. That is an environment that we have discussed, and that we are discussing on our Mondays discussions on our social page, right? That we are at, that we say we are office of people, but we need to remind ourselves that the office of people are now trying to lead our generation in the mindset that they now believe that everything in the generation should now be according to office standards only, right? And office requirements only, and where some people want to force their right on different countries, where they want to have countries now affirm to that some people say that the way of life is nature itself, it's natural. You allow our seasons, right? We allow ourselves to be at in our seasons. And what's saying that our generation would have to learn to allow one another that space, right? That is for everyone, right? That is that we do not negotiate it, but no one is going to be arrogant about it. And that is where we are at with today's discussion, that we say that our Mona Lisa, we're preparing basically for our discussion in our season, that had, when we look at Mona Lisa, and when we learned of Mona Lisa, we learned of a person, of a human being, that left us with one voice, and that one voice maybe was a portrait. Some people might have known the story of Mona Lisa. Yes, family lines know the family line of Mona Lisa. But for our generation, for most of us, it is that maybe was a picture on the wall, right? That spoke to a generation, and the picture was without words, right? It was many things that could have been said, that might have been said, that could have happened, that might have happened, but when we allow ourselves to listen to one another, we find ourselves with that we learn that a voice spoke in our season, and the voice spoke through many seasons, and we are in a season currently where we have to learn to know and to understand in our season, how do we listen to where we are at in our season, into what we are challenged with, what we might find our way away from that we want to deprive one another of that. There is someone else's voice in a different way, but there is acceptance of where we are at a generation. That is the awakened you in your season, you that approves your seasons, but you that are the every essence of you in your season, right? I'm just gonna rephrase what I'm saying. Your awakened you in your season, the you that approves that are seasons exactly. Yes, my sister said the other day they are celebrating spring season already, and it's still snowing in England, and we are excited. Yes, because today I'm wearing exactly that, and I'm in Auckland, New Zealand. Yes, and the seasons are changing for me also. It's going to autumn. Yes, it's already autumn, and we are preparing, yes, for June season and for the winter season. But in our seasons, that every approval of you in your season, that requirement that requires you to approve your seasons, right? It is that we do not deprive ourselves of where we are required to be at. And we need to rephrase, we need to emphasize on not depriving yourself, because so many times we are required to abide to standards, we are required to abide to laws, we are required to abide to legislative requirements, but our generation has learned that some of these discussions has become personal, right? It is that we have mentioned last month and the month before, when the process became personal, when it is that was someone else's maybe task in a daily job, someone else's business, and they try to like force it off on another person in our generation, right? It is that some people have to learn to manage it in the office, but it became that wanted to overrule someone else's day and someone else's life. And we have to learn that when you want to overrule a generation that is like us, yes, right? There is so much that we're excited about. There is so much that we come from, so much apart, it is so much pain, so much anger, and with all of that, there's so much excitement because we found ourselves in that we have the opportunity to voice for ourselves in our seasons. We have the opportunity to voice for ourselves in our generation. We have the opportunity to voice for that you know what, that you say Rabia Elise is not a rude person, but she's now also not going to allow people to deprive her and to abuse her the whole time, right? And then you learn that there is some rudeness in that character you or in the person you, right? That essence of you that is that every reaction, right? That every you that when you remind yourself to approve you in your season, you remind yourself that this will be I can also get angry in a season, right? She can also get angry when challenged. She can also get angry in a way that she might have not been familiar with before, right? If she had not been challenged to that extent that now she needs to, I have that protectiveness that says that, what, I'm firm about the way that I protect myself and the way that I require myself not to be abused and oppressed. Because once you learn that a generation looks like this and someone else or another woman wants to overrule men in our generation, and some women decided to step back and to allow themselves to go through all of these challenges, other women decided to not speak about the situation, other women decided to just go along with what is happening. Other women decided to go and find out really what is it that we are dealing with in our generation. And other women decided that, what, I'm going to be on Team Rabia Elise in this season. I might not say it on the page or social page, but I'm going to listen to what Rabia has to say concerning this whole situation. That it looks like one woman or team of women are trying to overrule our generation, and they're trying to deprive other women from being there. They're trying to deprive other women from voicing with where they're required to be at. They are trying to deprive other countries, other households with where they're required to be at. And then on that day, Rabia Elise says, I might sound firm, I might have been the sister in the church a year ago or 2 years ago, but today I'm the sister on social media, and there's no two ways about it. There's no negotiation about it. She's gonna be there, I'm gonna appear with what I have to say, and I'm gonna do with what I'm required to do. So the church sister is now not gonna be all professional, all dressed up, all perfect, all womanish, because remember, the woman give birth to the men in season. So some of Rabia's photos, yes, it looks like you're Rabia, are you now on the LGBT team or where you are at, because some of the photos have been edited so much and I had a good laugh along with it, right? But we are in that season that we say that the church is out. And either you are in the church, but that mindset of only staying in that way of life is all non-negotiable, because this universe requires us to know that all of these things are part of our generation, are part of humanity, are part of any generation. And we're going to either have to decide to be in one house together and to learn that this earth is one family, or we're going to either negotiate and argue the whole time through that education that I said on Monday in my discussion is a discussion room, but all the countries are still arguing about it. Everyone is still fighting about it. This one says, I only knew this church. The other one says, I only knew this religion. The other one says, I don't like a traditional healer. The other one says, I do not like that way of life. And such is happening around us. But we're going to either find that there is the every you in all of that that says that I'm not going to be abusive to someone else's rights. I'm not going to go and deprive them with what they're saying, but I'm also not going to have them kill me out because they want to now only have that way of life in our generation, where the universe birthed all of this, all of these stunning colors that we have been introduced to, and then we want to find ourselves in aggression to that, that you cannot be aggressed with, right? It is that we said that all the countries were coloring amazing on television. South Africa was in 2020 in South Africa, and the South African young children were coloring. They were wearing colors. They were in that season. They were coloring everything about what Mama and Papa Universe are educating us in season. That birthness of color, that attitude that represents, that you voice with, right? And I was excited to have watched and to have the opportunity to really enjoy that season with the South African community. And I've learned that other countries were also also in that they've learned that we are in a season of color, and we're in a season where every country voice and represents them, and every television station was preparing for that, and we were all getting excited about it. And then we had the war in Russia-Ukraine started, and we had all the arguments. We learned that all of these leaders in the world then had disagreements that caused Putin and Zelensky to be in argument with one another, and that caused other countries to also want to still argue about the situation. Then we were all decided to either go on with coloring or to listen to what is happening around us in this world. And it is a lot of things that has been revealed to us that none of us were aware of. A lot of things that through the Russia-Ukraine war, yes, we empathize with them, and we realize that a lot of things that is happening in this world we did not know about. People that were following us and that were trying to do lots of things about us, we didn't know about until we learned of all of these things that is happening in the world. And I always say that they shouldn't have tried to explain it to us in that way. I always say that there's always a better way to try and explain things to us. So I do not agree with the team of people that says that the war had to happen because they wanted to explain something to humanity. I really want to say on my side, everyone I have mentioned it to, a lot of people already, I do not agree with that team of people, because I've heard there's a team of people that really felt very proud of themselves, right? With having to reveal to us what is happening around us in this world. And I would have to say to that team of people with all honesty, right, that I definitely do not agree with that way that they try to explain all of the situations around us to us. I always say that there's always a way that we can educate on our television screens concerning these things. There's a way that we can have the appropriate managers and appropriate people to lead all of these discussions. And there is really people in our computer rooms, right, that are really trying to manage the situation, and they are really trying to get our opinions on social media constantly on how we understand what is happening in the world, and they really try and implement our opinions in what is happening when they are in businesses with these guys that are really now mentally challenged because of all the arguments that they have with one another. And I really want to say to that team of women, yes, that we are really proud of them, but when they can invite us into discussions, then they shouldn't, they shouldn't disregard the fact that there's a Rabia that they listen to her opinion every time, and that she might, someone might want to listen to her opinion, right? So we have people that sometimes want to have themselves, rule the house. The house has become to us like a mafia house. This earth in general has become to us like a mafia house in general. All the churches have decided to be businesses, and they've decided to manage the churches in that way. And really a lot of us have stepped away from the churches because they wanted to force that out on our daily lives, right? They wanted to say that if Rabia dresses like this on social media today, then Rabia is going to get an illness tomorrow. And they try all of these things now to make people ill and to really mess with people's lives. And a lot of us have stepped away from the church really for that main reason, because no one just wants to live in a certain closet on this earth. And that is why we really stepped away from the church environment. But we have not disregarded the right and wrong of our generation, and that education that you never say no thank you to that moment that you really have to apply that right and wrong in your life. And we really want to say to that group of women that really works with these guys and that really sits and manages all of these discussions, that when they can invite us into discussions and when they can have us in the offices, that they shouldn't now have found themselves in that they now also feel proud to be the next mafia wife, right? Or to be the next mafia woman. We really want to say that it looks like sometimes some people have got control over the situation, or it looks like a group of guys are managing the situation. And then you learn on earth that no one can be managed at any time. You learn on earth that not one country can overrule the whole world at any time. You learn that so many people in generations have tried one country to overrule a generation in a time, and it has caused a lot of countries to go into war. And that is one thing that we have learned in this generation, that many people wanted to try out to see that is there that one country can overrule a generation. And we really have to say that no, it is not possible, because when a team of people thought that they were ruling a house or they were ruling a part of our generation, everything went chaotic. All of the countries went chaotic, to say that that's non-negotiable, that no one can ever try to overrule a house. And that is where we have to really learn to allow one another the space that we have been birthed to be at on earth. And we really have to find a way to rather not argue about all of these things that some people have found themselves to now be in that position, that they are now owning businesses and they are now billionaires and they are now having that authority in a generation, and now they want to deprive, people from being there. And then our generation are saying, and Team Rabia and Team Awokhed are saying, we are definitely not going to agree with that abuse in our generation, and we're going to be very firm about that. Yeah. And everyone who has listened to us know that we are very firm about not agreeing, other countries to be depressed and to be oppressed and to be abused. We are gonna always try and not overreact, yes, and not get over paranoid, because people always say, Rabia, don't get paranoid about the situation. But we can't also just allow, when we look at things and everyone has the opportunity, to listen to the other and to not abuse the other, then you can sometimes voice for that. And that is where Business Awokhed is at. We are really that we speak in passion, we educate in every way that we honestly feel fine at, and that we honestly feel that we are in that season. And then that is that we are really own to where we are at, right? You own what you have, but you are own to where you are at in your season. And we are voicing exactly that with our Business Awokhed in season. Yeah, so thank you for joining our discussions, and we are excited to always share with you. And we are excited to do it in our own way, because we have had a lot of people that really wanted to say that some people want to be the next best of this. And to Rabia Elise, it might have been, but it is not exactly that, right? It might have been a thought somewhere maybe that I might have had or might not have had, but I can't say that it is exactly that where I find myself at in my season is to be where someone else is at, right? Or to be, I have mentioned before, to South Africa a lot. I love to say that, to be the next Oprah Winfrey. Yes, people always say, no, she looks like my Mama Anna a lot. Yes, maybe the Mama Universe that is parenting by Oprah Winfrey is parenting my house. Yes, she's got my Mama Anna's hands, I always say that, and she's got my Mama Anna's feet, and she's got every presence of my Mama Anna, but it is not that. I think it's the same parenting presence in the universe that might be the parenting presence in America also. Yes, and that is that people say that, oh, someone now wants to be the next best person, and there's been a lot of discussions about it. But I don't think when people put you in a discussion room and they want to sometimes silence you out from what you are saying and from where you are at, then they sometimes want to maybe have their own family there, or maybe have themselves do that. And such is our generation. We can't call it yellow jealousy only, right? We call it yellow because such is our sun, right? Such is the brightness of a season, right? Such is that brings that when people look at you, they see that every essence of you, right? That attitude, right? That when you look at Oprah Winfrey's attitude, it is exactly a Mama Anna attitude. She's not like us that we get all aggressive to one another in a situation. No, she's got that exact parenting Mama Anna-ness that is gonna know when to say things. She's gonna be herself, and she's gonna just say it the way it is. And such is our generation in general, and such is that we are left to allow ourselves. The universe gives you that, and you have to allow yourself to be fine with where you are at, and to not negotiate it with anything, and to just allow yourself to get familiar. We have mentioned a few months ago, yes, about the South season, and we started our year with the South season, and we are really still in that your essence of you is yourself in your season. And it's being fine with yourself in your season. And it is allowing yourself to be awakened with what is happening around you, right? That we said, attentiveness, assertiveness, awokenness, awareness, that you say, allow yourself to be fine with where you are at. Not to be only where other people's requirements for you are. And allow yourself to sense with yourself, what is right for you. What is my Mona Lisa in season. What is that Rabia Elise, that when my Mama Anna heard that the name is Rabia, and Papa Yapi said, but add the Elise to it. I said, but did Papa Yapi add the Elise to it, or was it Home Affairs? Because Home Affairs those years did all of these things. And they say, no one knows, but own it. It is yours. It is your name. Make it yours. Be that in your season, and allow yourself to be fine with that. Allow yourself yourself to embrace your season with that is your birth name. And then on the moment when you woke up, yes, in the baby birth room, and you really heard your parents mentioning your name or you heard their voice, and then you were familiar with it, right? Familiarizing yourself in your season, with owning it, with saying that, you know what, everyone else wants me to be this, I appreciate that education, but let me be me in my season. Let me appreciate my voice in my season. Let me be familiar with my voice in my season. Because yes, Mama Anna is the parent, but Mama Anna's voice is now a little bit softer in the universe. It is still in the universe, it is still there, but when I allow myself to listen to me, it is that very birth voice that I have been born with, and that is that essence of you, that is the awoken you in your season. And that is why what our Mona Lisa, us in our seasons, we are not gonna get agreed with one another's differences, and we are not gonna want to argue every day about the same arguments. Yes, we had educations years ago. Yes, I'm gonna mention that, but we are not gonna now be in arguments every day. No one wants to be in argument every day. I remember when I was little, and when I used to fight with my friends, there were those days that I was fighting, and then a few minutes after that I look at the friend's attitude and I get familiar with it. And when I get familiar with it, I realize this person doesn't really want to fight with me, and then I feel bad, yes, about the whole situation. And then I would normally find myself having to be at ease with not being angry with that person. And that is the education that I have learned ever since I was a little girl, and ever since I grew up, to find myself in that. And that is my motivation with this month's Mona Lisa, the every essence of you. It is sense within yourself. What do you feel fine with? Sense within yourself. How do you feel about the situation? What is happening around you? And don't get aggressive about it. But being that familiar voice, that is a voice that reminds you of your baby birth when you were born, yes, and of your mama that mentioned your name, and your mama said, Rabia. And you get excited as a baby, and your eyes glittered up because my mama said my name. And that familiarization of your season is that ever voice, ever presence in the universe. And there is that protective environment. Becomes that every reaction of us, that we say that we are not arrogant, but I've learned that I can also be arrogant. We are not rude, but I've learned that I can also be rude. We are not jealous, but I've learned that I can be jealous. But when the parentingness, when the familiarization is there, then the protectiveness is there. And when I feel protective, then I would be protective to someone else, and then I would not abuse someone else. And such is our Mona Lisa's in our season. We have been educated to wear the same colors, yes. This one wears yellows today, the other one wears yellow. We never knew that yellow and yellow would have us fight so much in 2022, or in the season. But we realized that sometimes the yellow and yellow that we were educated when we were little girls, and now we are we are older, and we are in our 40s, in our 30s, and we now learn that people are actually killing one another because of the same color wearing. And we learn that it is not us doing it, but it is the ever education in the universe that requires us to now not do that, because someone else comes in. They might think that we are trying to manipulate a part of the universe that might have been manipulated generations ago. And therefore, when we really find ourselves in familiarization, you would know that, okay, my yellow today is fine, or why am I really wearing yellow? And if you really don't worry about it, but don't worry about it. But then we shouldn't educate ourselves to now be abusive and to now want to go and do that. And then we learn that there's some part of the universe that is busy educating, and someone else is trying to silence it. And the more they're trying to silence it, the more they teach people to wear the same clothes and the same colors, and the more it is humanity then being oppressive and abusive to another part of the universe. And therefore we have to educate ourselves thoroughly. And yes, South Africa television, yes, they have educated very well, but I really, really agree that there's a lot that South Africa can still educate on, and that the South African young people can, yes, they are very intelligent, thank you, and there's a lot that they can still educate our generation on, yes, and where they are at in this season, but on also understanding that protective environment that is sometimes necessary, that sometimes, prevents a war from happening, that sometimes prevents unnecessary international arguments, from arguments from escalating, It is all of those educations that we were educated when we were young, and now we are required to really apply it in our daily lives and to learn to really not be angry about the situation, because we are all on earth and we don't have nothing to be angry about, and we are all human beings that has all of these reactions to one another, but we're really gonna have to learn to not be aggressive to one another concerning where we are at in our season. Yes, another thing with regards to our seasons that we want to focus on is our amazing plants. Yes, this is exactly as we bought the plant a few months ago. Yeah, and yes, they have been really nurturing in season, and the parenting in our season is important. And it is one thing that I have said, I've told myself, I'm gonna now not be the mother that is now parenting a teenager, and the teenager is in that mindset that the environment around the teenager is so much that the teenager really wants to listen to the parenting in the universe in general. And when we learn that our children are all different, right? It is, I've mentioned before that my Mama Martha, Grandmama Martha, grew up as a young girl away from a family house. Yes, she lost her mother at a very young age. And then she had to grow up without her mother, and she had to be the mother of her children and of other children at a very young age. And my Mama Anna then had to leave house also at a very young age as a teenager, yes, to also be parenting at a very young age. And so my Kiaraki is now definitely not going to be Rabia Elise that is now going to want to be the mother in the house, because my Kiaraki is now exactly Mama Martha and Mama Anna, who is now in that mindset that they want the space for themselves, they want to listen to what's happening around them, and they want to be in that is their own environment the whole time, right? It is that they are Kiara is 11 years old, 12 years old, and Kiara's already looking and reacting like 21 years old, and in that mindset, that is that family line that our generation has learned, that our children in primary school cannot even be in that primary school mindset for so long, because there's so much happening in our generation that our generation parentings and parents have not yet been educated about. There's so much international maturity happening in our generation that the children in primary school has not even yet learned that these things are happening in the world and happening around them, right? And it's international things that sometimes affect countries. And when we are in that we have been exposed to so much, then we have to allow our children to learn on the way that they feel fine to learn at, and the pace that they feel fine to learn at. And we're not going to over abuse the situation to be arrogant, because some people said a few months ago, I heard a few people said that we are humanity on earth and we are all boyfriend and girlfriends, and I had a good laugh about it. It sounds funny, and they said because there's no one else, so why are we all so paranoid about the whole situation? And they are maybe discussing all of these things, and they said because everyone is actually girlfriend and boyfriend, and this one wants this one, this one wants this one, and that one wants that one. But what we learn is the education that we have been educated ever since we were in primary school, that there is the right and wrong. That is that if we're gonna want to live in that way, that everyone looks at one another as this is now Rabia is married to Dorian, but Rabia is now my girlfriend, and then someone might feel that the situation is not right, and they might argue the situation. And such is our generation's argument also in season, that we sense what around ourselves, that our environment is this, and yes, everyone can do what they want to, but what is going to happen on the day that everyone is just going to do what they want to, because everyone on earth is now just boyfriend and girlfriend, and no one is now going to parent, and no one is now going to worry about that, and everyone now wants to just be in that mature mindset the whole time. It is that we learn on that pace, that we were educated ever since primary school, that levels of education, that we do not disregard the fact that all of these other things are happening, but we also learn to listen to and to sense within ourselves, is this education right for this child at this level? Is this education right for this child at this level? And we abide to that. That remains that protective environment of parents, right? That parents in that way, that no one expects the children to just grow up in one day. No one says that no one is looking in at children and see on social media, and everyone says that everyone is on social media in these days. And guys say that if parents can't parent, then the guys are just gonna do what they want to in houses. And then we learn that education that we had ever since we were young in our households, and then we went to primary school, and then we went to all of these different levels, that education is of utmost importance still in our generation, so that we do not find our generation in so much argument and so much war that could have been prevented in season. And such is that we call parenting in season. Another thing that we want to say, we have discussed parenting, right? We've discussed parenting on our Awokhed page, and we have discussed that requirement to allow the universe presence to parent in your season. And that is what I've mentioned before, is that familiarization. And when we are familiar in our season, then we allow ourselves to not overreact about what is happening. But when you familiarize yourself, it is like getting into an office environment, right? And when you are in an office environment, you get familiar with what's required of you to do in the office, right? When you start a new job, you get familiar with what's required for you to do. And you learn that education is that is now not an education that is only for an office environment, but that then becomes our every education in life. There is that education that when you are challenged, you allow yourself to be in that educated room. That is that protective environment for us. I remember in New Orleans Primary School, when I was in primary school, that there was a challenging season that our generation had those years. And I remember while we were at New Orleans Primary School, there was a lot of things that happened in our community. And whilst these things happened, we were one day away from school and walking out of school, and while we were walking, there was a whole lot of things happening, and all the children turned around, and all the children ran back to school, and everyone shouted. And that protective environment was the classroom, and the teachers then locked the classroom, and we were all fine in the classroom, and no one was aggressive and no one was abusive, and the teacher educated us those years to be calm in situations like that. And it is that you say that when our generation really are exposed to so much, and you are familiar with the situation internationally in general, and you are familiar with the different communications that happens, then be in that we say apply that protective education room in our generation's everyday approaches with what we are required to do, with making sure that no one over abuses the other, and that no one are being abused by the other, but that protective environment that became once for me the education room would be that environment for us when we are wanting to say what we want to say, or wanting to do what we want to do, or wanting to react how we want to react, or wanting to wear what we want to wear. Then we get familiar with the how do you feel about what you want to do, and to be in that is once again the education room. In the education room, we don't negotiate with nothing at all. We have lots of reasons why some people have decided to not want education in their countries, and there's a lot of discussions that is happening about the education function. But one thing that we cannot say is that when we argue education away in our generation, and when we argue because our Mama Anna was not educated, right, and our Mama Anna didn't go to school, and our Mama Anna was taken out of school, right, probably the first year of primary school, and our Mama Anna never had the opportunity, so she was always excited to have her children attend school. But we never knew of all the messes that happens in school, and all the discussions that is happening around the school environment, and all of the communications that as a generation we look at it as mafia communications, and then we learn but the whole world is a mafia world, that even the parliamentary leaders are every day busy with mafia discussions, right? And therefore education is an argument during our season, because there's a lot that has happened in education departments, and there's a lot of communication that had our education departments now be challenged, and our school education be challenged. But I always say that when we argue education away, and we look at the universe that has allowed that part to be part of humanity, and then it looks like humanity wants to manipulate another function of the universe. And when it seems like we want to argue another part of the universe, and we want to manipulate that part of the universe that has now become part of humanity, and now humanity is arguing about that fact, that is a part of the universe that comes to humanity and that educates us in the education room. And now humanity is wanting to manipulate that part with wanting to argue education away because of this reason and this reason and this reason. And that was all human arguments, right? That was never arguments with that part of the universe where we have been familiar with, that the films is written from those part of the universe, that there's a lot of other communication in the universe that are happening. And therefore, when the education function of our generation is in such argument in our generation, then it looks like humanity wants to manipulate and humanity wants to be aggressive to that part of the universe. That is also part of humanity, and that is also part of the education room that a lot of us doesn't know about, because it only is the film people that are having those communications. It only is certain part of our generations people that have got those communications, and we didn't know that those communications are out there, but they are like parenting to our generation. And when it looks like we want to argue with the education system of our generation, we have to learn to know how to discuss the matters so that it does not look like humanity has now gotten all of this information and now we want to manipulate them away from us because now we want to find a way of making it work for us. It is that I always say that every communication that comes to Earth are different communications. The celebrity house is a different communication line. The newsrooms are different communication lines from a different part of the universe. The education function is different communications from a different part of the universe. And the sports functions, all of the sports that happens on Earth are different parts of communications from a different part of the universe. And when humanity really wants to argue, it looks like humanity wants to argue with them, but they might sometimes know how to discuss the matter amongst one another with the differences that they might have and the challenges that they might have with humanity on Earth. And therefore, while we all have learned that the Earth is like this, that such of these amazingnesses is happening around us, and then we learn to not be over abusive with one another, and we learn to abide to that is that education, that is that you become that child in the room that learns to know when to listen and how do you listen and how do you not get aggressive, because there's so much happening around you that you don't know about. But there's that we have learned that on the day that the situation gets like that, then we don't get paranoid about it, but we learn to educate thoroughly so that no one feels that no one is manipulating the other. And so that we do not become part of that might have been the communication to that part of the universe, and then the communication might have been a little bit disrespectful, and that part of the universe now feels that humanity is a bit disrespectful to them, and they now feels that humanity have learned that this is how they communicate, and now humanity is trying to abuse the communications on different levels on their side. And that is why they want us to really get into that we do not argue about the situations, but we also do not abuse one another in that way, because they can sense and they know when we are abusive to one another, and that is the every parenting of our generation also. And because of that, we allow ourselves to be in that awokenness of where we find ourselves in our seasons, that approves you in your season. That is you that feels that if something doesn't feel right with you, or if you do not agree with what is happening with where you are at, then you don't get abusive about it, but you also are awoken to what is really happening, so that you don't find yourself endangered in an environment that is sometimes all of these communications, and that is all of the different languages, all of the different colors, all of the different countries, all of the different countries, people looks different. So that means there's that parenting function and that part of the universe that is all different. And on that day, we all become the children on earth again, so that we do not abuse the one or the other in that way. That is it for what I wanted to say. And yes, I can sometimes say it very fast, but we have to write. And that is it for our Mona Lisa discussion today, with our awoken us in our seasons and our approval of where we are at in our seasons, but us learning to not abuse one another, to always apply the right from wrong in our lives, and to always do that is going to be protective. And if you feel protective, then you know you would be protective to someone else. And that there is kindness in the room. Yes, I always say that kind people are going to not know about a situation and know there's that, and then they abuse other people about it. What I want to mention on that also is the fact that our generation has had now all these communications, and the communication sometimes has other people have information before other people has it. And what happened with humanity is that that when they learn that they had the information first, then they want to abuse Rabia the next day, because they know exactly what Rabia is going to wear the next day. They know exactly where Rabia is going to be at the next day, and humanity tries to manage Rabia's day in that way, and that sometimes can be a dangerous environment. And I have learned that is happening around me, and I was angry, and I said, but why is Malvina wearing my clothes? And how does Malvina, yes, Malvina Latrican on Instagram, and I've mentioned it before, I say, how does he know what's in my cupboard? And how is he wearing my New Orleans Belle school color dress, and I still am having to educate the New Orleans Belle season? And she was wearing it on her birthday years in 2022 years, on a Facebook page, yes, Malvina Latrican, and we are friends, and we grew up in Chicago, and I was trying to get familiar with what is happening around me, right? Oh, we are familiar, our families were familiar with one another, and our parents grew up, and we came from Africa, and we really didn't know what is happening with our surnames. Being Malvina, their surname is Mbabani, my surname is Mbatani, and our parents came from Africa, and my papa died at a young age, and no one knew what was happening, right? And then we just learned, and I looked at the situation, and I said, but how can she be wearing that, and it's my birthday, and I'm still speaking in New Orleans Belle season? What is happening? And then I saw that when I bought that sign, they have this, that they also now have that New Orleans Belle colors the whole time. And then the next thing, I put Al Jazeera, and there was India, and India was also trying to send messages to me about my New Orleans Belle school colors, and I got aggressive about it. And then the next day I see, but the next weekend I have an Awokhed session again, and someone else have that colors on, and I was like, what is happening? How do y'all know what is happening in my cupboard, and what communication do y'all have? And that is where I want to say that if there's people that has got the communication before us, and people send you messages about what is happening in Rabia's closet and what Rabia is going to wear today, then do not go and wear that and go and buy that. And do not stir aggression in that circumstance, because I find myself in a different educative season, and every time I'm going to have to argue with someone concerning what I'm doing, then someone else is going to want to go and educate, and someone else is going to want to go and say that Rabia is doing what someone else was trying to do, and then no one is going to listen to Rabia on that day, and then that day might be a day that there's someone else out there that might require Rabia to say something, because they might be in that season that Rabia is in, and then someone else tried to silence Rabia out by wearing a clothing before she wears it, by knowing exactly what she's going to wear on that day, that when it came to 22/11, my birthday in 2022, and when I celebrated my 39th birthday, I was so disappointed because my finances have stopped. They have sent messages to one another in different countries, and New Zealand received messages that Rabia doesn't go to work, and they try to rule my cupboard, they try to rule my household, they try to rule my day, and no one knows what no one was trying to tell me. But what I am trying to say is that when you all know that the situation on earth is like this, then do not stir further aggression, because Rabia is maybe working with a different team on earth that is now not going to accept the way that you're going to silence Rabia out the whole time. That is now not going to understand the fact that Malvina's family and Rabia's family are either familiar with one another. That is now not going to accept the fact why is Malvina Latrican wearing Rabia's clothes in the Netherlands, and Rabia must still wear it, and then she has Rabia's yellow pants on, and Rabia must still wear it, and then she has Rabia's green pants on and green suit on, and Rabia must still wear green pants, and then the whole situation got crazy. And Antoinette went off of Instagram. My sister Antoinette Mali went off. And the University of England, my sister Antoinette Mali's daughter is there. And there was a whole discussion about our generation that Antoinette Mali them doesn't even know about yet. Leon doesn't know about yet. And some people try to rule our houses with lots of things, communications into our houses. But what we are trying to say is that when you people are trying to manage our generation, do not do it in a way that you all are trying to, argue with us. Because my brother Zach Philander in South Africa even doesn't know all the communication that goes from Dubai to South Africa about Brother Zach. And the only time Brother Zach has been in South Africa, in Dubai, was when we were there 1 month in 2004, when we were called there to come and do a music trip in Dubai, and we never knew what it was about. And the music trip didn't work out for us. We traveled back to South Africa and we went on with our lives, right? And these years, there's so much communication from Dubai into our family line. My brother Zach doesn't know about it. Antoinette doesn't know about it. Brother Anton has been really abused in South Africa with drugs. My younger brother Anton, that I am very, very firm about. My brother Martin really went through an accident that our family thought it was just natural way of life. You know, he was thrown out of the train and he had one eye and he was disabled all of his years when he came from his office, from the job, right from, and his career just started, and he had an amazing career. And he was for 30 years, you know, unemployed, and for 30 years dependent on government because of all these arguments that is happening in our season. And my sister Antoinette doesn't realize that the situation is like this. My brother Zach doesn't realize that there's so much argument and discussion about him that he only went to Dubai for one music season, but the whole world is still in our households, right? It is that we do not know about. But I'm gonna tell when I really travel to South Africa, I will really discuss it with my brother them, that they do not think that this is a normal way of life. The things that happened around us was just meaning to happen, right? And I'm gonna have to discuss it to my sister Antoinette, right? Whose daughter is now at university, and there's already other discussions that people are trying to have in communications that they send to our cell phones. That is not abusive, but that is that they are looking into our families also in that side. And that I really want to say that when y'all are stirring aggression in our house, there's a group of people that are but protective to our household also in this circumstance. And therefore, do not try, and I always say, do not try and the one be stronger than the other one, or do not try and the one be more oppressed to the other one, because my family here doesn't know all the things that I know of the discussions that is happening around our family house because of our mama Anna that were in apartheid in Awokhd's house, and that apartheid that became part of our generation. And then apartheid became in the African family where the one was better than the other one. And then our family became in the discussion room. And then they came to me to try and oppress me in my job, Whakarangaroa in New Zealand. And I was like not having it. And I was like checking what was happening. And I read all the information on the computer. And I was going to not negotiate it. And I went out of the office and they didn't give me a job ever since in New Zealand. But I do not argue about it. But what I am saying is that I'm not going to argue about the situation, but no one should try and oppress no one, because if you all have communication before us, then do not try to oppress our households about it, because we are really going to not agree with it. And that is where I'm going to be firm, and I'm going to sometimes then be the rude Rabia in the house. That is all that we have to say for today. We really hope that y'all get over y'all's arguments and that no one try to abuse no one's countries and no one try to abuse no one's houses any further. And yes, thank you, Putin and China. They are gonna talk a peace deal with Zelensky. Yes, because Putin know why he have to. I always say Putin exactly know why he had to be firm with what he did in Ukraine, because he was being oppressed by other countries that really wanted to abuse the Ukraine-Russia house and that really wanted to have Putin weaker than they are, so that they can take over the world. And Putin wanted to have none of that shit. Putin was not gonna negotiate it. He was not gonna agree with it, and he couldn't explain it to Zelensky because Zelensky was still friends with those countries, and those countries wanted in on Russia, Ukraine, and Putin was not gonna have that nonsense around him. So that is that I really hope that China said they're gonna speak the peace deal with Ukraine, and they're gonna explain to Ukraine the situation that is happening in this world. But hopefully Ukraine has learned the discussions that there was one country that wanted to overrule the world, and some of the countries did not agree with it. And such is our generation in general, and we hope that they will find discussion in all of these arguments, and they will not argue it further. So now that everyone knows what is happening around them, we hope that no one will be angry about the situation, but no one will also even try to overrule the other. But we learn that they're gonna have to learn to work together in different countries that we are explaining in our leading generation talk, so that they can really get over the argument that is not meant to be an argument, that they could have explained it better to the other. That is all that we wanted to say. And what I wanted to say about Putin, yes, President Putin in Russia. So they are preparing a court case against him. Yes, we agree with what has happened in Ukraine is non-negotiable, but we also are not going to disregard the films that were written about the situation even before the situation happened in Russia, Ukraine. Yes, so there was films that they have written, that they have planned all of this. The governments really knew that Putin was really going to stand up for himself and is not going to be abused by them. The governments really knew that they're never going to come and rule in Russia or in Ukraine in any way. And Putin was very firm about it. And they have mentioned that on Al Jazeera, yes, that the discussion started since 2014. So this that they call war crimes are really arguments that they have started with Putin and Zelensky in their countries. And Putin and Zelensky was not going to have it. Zelensky was firm that he's not even going to accept those arguments with Putin wanting to take over Ukraine. But they were both firm on that no one is going to overrule no one's houses. And we hope that they get to a peace deal to discuss how are they going to manage the situation in a way that's going to be non-oppressive to them, because both parties were endangered, both countries were endangered by the war, and no one knew who set them up for the wars, and no one knew who wanted to bomb their countries down. But the situation now looked like it was not only Putin, but when we looked at all the different countries' reactions, we learned that all the different countries were aggressive to Russia, Ukraine in general. And what we also learned about the discussion and about what has happened is that they have known ever since 2014 that this is the discussion, right? The United Nations team had time to intervene with that and to prevent that from becoming a war. And everyone was really in that they were trying either to oppress Putin, and they were really discussing matters without really discussing it with having Putin involved, because they really wanted to overrule in their own way, and Putin really was gonna have none of that. So there was films written about it, yes. There was, yes, Angelina Jolie that was in Ukraine, yes. Mr. and Mrs. Smith has got to do with that exactly. There's a lot of films that I have watched, yes, that has got to do with the war in Ukraine that has been planned years ago against Putin and against the Ukrainians, against the Russians, and they were really now not going to be abused. We do not agree with what has happened, but I want to say with all the parliamentary leaders that my next thing that I want to say is President Joe Biden, I do not agree with the fact that you know that this is a war and that Putin is still in war, and you are aggressing him another time by calling him into the courtroom for a crime discussion. You know, when people are aggressed in a way in our generation, and when other countries are being oppressed by it, then we require our presidential leaders to really manage the matter that is going to be non-abusive to any of the parties, so that the discussion can be the peace deal, because China has made it clear that they are really going to discuss a peace deal between Putin and Zelensky, and they are really going to try and have them discuss the matter rather than abusing one another in that way and abusing their countries in that way. So yes, when a situation is aggressed in that way, the crime concerning it, yes, is a crime, but the timing of it, you know, the communication of it, putting it on television and people listening in, at the end of the day, that becomes exactly where it looks like you want people to vote now on the situation, and humanity is never gonna vote on one of the situations, because we do not agree with treating one another in that way. So we know that the United Nations teams had to manage the situation better. They had the time to manage it better. They were familiarized with the situations for years already. They knew that that is exactly what is gonna happen. And to call it a crime, I do not know how do they get to call it a crime in season, but I do know that y'all can discuss the matter with Ukraine and with Russia, so that Putin doesn't get more aggressive with other countries, and so that the situation can really, that can escalate, can really be prevented.